Guys, welcome back to another interesting video. Today's video is actually very dear to my heart, and anyway, it's from Black Journal. It's titled 10 shocking things that were normal to slave. So this is going to be taking us back to the slave trade period, things that were probably not mentioned in the history books, things that were hidden, things that probably we did not know, or we never saw. We're going to be watching that today. I promise not to cry. We just to learn for history's sake, just to know our roots, what happened, and just interesting facts or things that were never mentioned. My name is Oge. Welcome back to my channel. It's your first time here. Hello, hi. Do also like, share, subscribe, turn on the post notification bell. Let's check this out together.
For those ensnared in the shackles of slavery, life was a perpetual struggle for survival. Day after day, they toiled under the scorching sun, their weary bodies pushed to the limits by backbreaking labor. The conditions they endured were not only physically demanding, but also rife with disease and unsanitary surroundings. These enslaved individuals, already stripped of their dignity and freedom, were further assaulted by the cruel hands of fate. Yet the torment inflicted upon slaves did not end with the arduous labor and squalor they endured. Instead, it reached new depths of cruelty through the implementation of punishments designed to break their spirits and enforce a system of dominance. From public whippings that left bloody scars on their bodies to branding and mutilation, the physical pain was a constant companion in their lives. Brace yourself, for what you are about to discover will unveil the depths of human cruelty and remind us of the importance of justice, equality, and the enduring resilience of the human spirit. In this video, we delve into the 10 brutal punishments endured by slaves and confront the uncomfortable truths of the past. Before we get right into the video, please smash the like button and subscribe to the channel to keep informed of our eye-opening black narrative. Number 10. Whipping. One of the most common and brutal punishments meted out to enslaved people was whipping. Whipping was a cruel and calculated method used to show power and keep enslaved people in line. Slave owners and overseers used whipping to make them afraid, prevent rebellions, and reinforce the idea that white people were superior. The whip cut through their skin, causing physical agony and deep emotional trauma, always reminding them of their subservient position. The history of whipping as punishment for slaves is rife with countless examples of its brutality. One chilling example is the story of Harriet Jacobs, an escaped slave and author of the book, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. In her book, Jacobs describes the anguish of witnessing the slave owner brutally whip one of his plantation slaves. She recalls seeing the blood and gore on the walls the next morning. Another haunting example is the story of a slave named Gordon, also known as Whipped Peter. His back bore the horrifying testimony of countless lashings, with a lattice of scars crisscrossing his skin. These scars were a constant reminder of the unspeakable suffering endured by enslaved people. However, the horrors did not end with the initial beatings. Some heartless slave owners went to even greater lengths to inflict pain and prolong the agony. When the wounds of their slaves started to heal, these owners would order that the wounds be opened up again. To intensify the suffering, they would apply substances like red pepper and turpentine to the reopened gashes. The burning pain caused by these agonizing applications is unimaginable. There's a story of one owner who ground a brick into dust and mixed it with lard. He would then rub this mixture into the deep wounds of a helpless slave. Though it pales in comparison to the other punishments coming up, whipping was a brutal reality for enslaved people, symbolizing their dehumanization.
Oh my God, you guys, I don't know if I'm able to see this through to the end. This is wickedness. Just like the narrator has said, like, this is dehumanizing. Like, these slave masters, are they humans? Like, what could these people have done that would warrant such wickedness? What would, just to break their spirits, enslave them? Like, what? This is so wicked. Like, it is bad enough that you've caused them so much pain by flogging them, but you go ahead to open their wounds once you realize that the wounds are healing. That is sheer wickedness. You're just a bitter, wicked person. Like, oh my God. Oh my God. How are you able to even do that? How are you able to watch another person go through so much pain? Are you not humans? If you are not human now, I would understand that you don't know what it feels like, but you are human as well. And you go ahead to reopen someone's pain, you mix pepper with whatever. Oh my gosh, how were these people able to survive? And they are saying like they are normal to slaves. How is that even normal? We'll try to watch this to the end. We're going to number 9 now.
And oppression. Number 9. Mutilation slaves were subjected to grueling physical labor, particularly on cotton plantations or in the fields. Those who worked in their masters' homes were expected to maintain a certain appearance, often favoring those with lighter skin or better communication skills. Despite the expectation that slaves' bodies should be protected and cared for, this was rarely the case. Unfortunately, when slaves engaged in acts of resistance or fought against each other, owners would frequently order mutilation as a form of punishment. These brutal acts ranged from cutting off ears or slashing at flesh to more extreme measures, such as
mutilation, like cutting off ears, amputating their leg. Oh my God. Okay.
Such as amputating limbs, gouging out eyes, severing hamstrings, and even castrating both males and females. Tragically, the victims of these gruesome acts rarely received any medical attention or treatment for their injuries. As a result, many would succumb to infections, severe blood loss, and other life-threatening complications. The lack of medical care further emphasized the disregard for the humanity and well-being of enslaved individuals. Number 8. Brandings.
Oh my God.
This brutal practice involved burning the flesh with a heated metal tool. The purpose of branding was to mark slaves as someone's property, making it easier to identify them and prevent theft or unauthorized selling of slaves. Large companies often branded their slaves to assert ownership and discourage others from claiming them. In Louisiana, there was a law called the Code Noir that allowed the branding of slaves as a punishment for running away. By the year 1840, New Orleans had become the largest slave market in the country, subjecting countless individuals to this cruel decree. Particularly in the southern states, branding became a common form of punishment for slaves who attempted to escape. The branding mark, often a letter or some other distinguishable symbol, was seared onto the slave's face, making it difficult for them to be assigned to work in the master's house or serve in more privileged roles. The act of branding left a permanent scar on the enslaved individuals, both physically and emotionally. It served as a painful reminder of their status as property and the harsh consequences they would face for seeking freedom. Moreover, branding became a form of evidence to counter claims by larger companies that denied their involvement in such inhumane practices. Number 7. Smoked alive.
Branding, like, are they like some sort of animals? Even animals, you shouldn't subject animals to such pain of branding. It's not a toy. The person is not, he's not a toy, or she's not a toy. She's not some sort of thing that you brand, and let's say the branding is just probably you're putting some sort of probably handcuffs or some sort of chain. No, a melted hot iron, and then they will insert it into your skin just to brand it, and then that was gruesome. Like, that was painful. That was so much pain that someone could actually endure. Why did they not try to commit suicide? Like, yeah, I mean, I can't imagine someone going through so much pain. First, it was what was the first thing? The whipping, and then mutilation, and then branding. This is tough. Must have been so tough for them. And some people survived this. Some people ran away. So, like the woman that ran away and wrote a book. Man.
Smoked alive. Over time, some states with slaves introduced laws to supposedly protect the well-being and rights of enslaved individuals. However, these laws were rarely enforced, leaving slaves vulnerable to all sorts of abuse. In different states, different cruel practices gained popularity. One chilling account comes from William W. Brown, an escaped slave who shared his experience. He revealed a horrifying practice that was common in Virginia. Imagine a situation where a slave owner would bind the slaves and take them to a smokehouse. Inside, the slaves would be whipped, adding to their suffering. But the cruelty didn't stop there. The owner would then set a fire using tobacco stems, causing thick smoke to fill the room. The slaves would be forced to inhale this suffocating smoke as an additional form of punishment. You can only imagine the fear and pain these enslaved individuals endured. They were already bound and whipped, and now they had to struggle for every breath amidst the choking smoke. It's hard to fathom the depths of cruelty and disregard for human life that exist.
Honestly, it is so hard to fathom the depth of cruelty. It's so hard to, you can't comprehend, like you cannot relate, except if you actually were one of those slavers. Like, I am so shocked, like, I can't even fathom, I can't wrap my head around it. I'm finding it difficult to actually understand it, but it is so hard. This is, if these things are not things that are actually true, I would say no, nobody would ever do this to anybody, because you cannot watch another human go through so much pain. It is so hard to fathom the depth of this cruelty. Gosh.
That existed during that time. What makes this even more shocking is that these punishments took place despite the existence of laws meant to protect slaves. Sadly, the lack of enforcement allowed owners to carry out such atrocious acts without facing consequences. Stories like William W. Brown's remind us of the immense suffering endured by slaves and expose the harsh realities of their existence. Number 6. The Hogshead former slaves have shared horrifying stories of abuse and torture that they experienced. One such brave individual was Moses Roper, who escaped from slavery and wrote a book about his life. In his book, he revealed the harsh realities that enslaved people in America had to endure.
Slavery.
Moses described how some slave owners found pleasure in
American slavery. Not just black people, some white people went through slavery. This is shocking. Humans are crude. Man.
In inflicting corporal punishment. He shared a particularly chilling tale of a slaveholder who had a large barrel called a hogshead. This barrel was filled with nails, with the sharp ends pointing inward. The owner would force the slaves into these barrels and then roll them down steep hills while he and other slaves watched. Stuffed into those barrels with nails digging into their bodies, they were subjected to a dangerous and degrading spectacle while being watched by their owner and others. Moses Roper's account provides a harrowing glimpse into the depths of cruelty inflicted upon enslaved individuals. Number 5. Suspended beneath a cooking fire. Harriet Jacobs also escaped slavery and wrote about her exploits. She described falling into the possession of a slave owner who harassed her on a regular basis despite the protests of his wife. To avoid him, Harriet hid in the crawl space in her grandmother's ceiling for 7 years before fleeing to England. But that wasn't the only terrifying experience Harriet faced. Near her hiding spot lived a cruel slaveholder who had hundreds of slaves. The master had a favorite punishment that was both painful and horrifying. He would tie up a slave, suspend them above the ground, and then light a fire beneath them. As the fire crackled and popped, a piece of fatty pork would sizzle above the flames. The burning fat would then drip onto the poor slave's bare skin, causing unbearable pain. Every drop of scorching fat that fell from above inflicted searing pain and left permanent marks on their bodies. The intense heat made it even worse, adding to their suffering and making it a truly horrific experience. The cycle of abuse and degradation not only inflicted physical pain and suffering, but also shattered any hope of a better life for the slaves. Number 4. Demotion, or sale punishments in slavery, weren't just about whippings and beatings. There were other ways slave owners exerted their power and control. George Washington, America's first president, was not only a fan of physical punishments for slaves, but also supported demoting them or selling them if they didn't meet expectations. Now, you might think that demotion doesn't sound as terrible as some of the other horrors we've talked about, but for a slave, it could be a matter of life and death. Slaves who didn't work hard enough or didn't meet their owner's demands could be demoted. This meant they would be taken from their current, perhaps less physically demanding jobs like working in the house or having a skilled trade and forced to work in the fields. The fields were harsher, the work was more physically demanding, and the treatment from owners and overseers became even more brutal. Imagine being taken away from a job where you had some relative comfort or skill, only to be thrown into grueling labor in the fields. The conditions were tough, the work was backbreaking, and the treatment was even more violent. Slaves in this situation often faced severe punishments, enduring beatings, and suffering from the cruel hands of those in power. But it could get even worse. In the most dreadful cases, slaves who repeatedly tried to escape were sold off at cheap prices. They were sold to owners who were infamous for their mistreatment of slaves or even their tendency to work them to death. They were torn away from everything they knew, forced into the hands of ruthless owners who showed no regard for their well-being. Number 3, public burnings. Punishments in slavery were not only about hurting individuals in private. They were often meant to send a message to other slaves and even entertain onlookers. Public burnings were one of the
Public burning. They were meant for entertainment. 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 And to send a warning to other slavers. You burn someone and it's supposed to be meant to entertain other people. How? How is somebody's pain supposed to entertain you and send a message? Send a message. Like, these punishments are gruesome. Like, no human being is supposed to go through this, no matter what you have done. My gosh. Even people in prison, people sent to prison, don't go through this kind of pain or this kind of punishment. What?
One of the most horrifying forms of punishment that enslaved people had to endure. In such a scene, a slave, accused of some wrongdoing, is tied either to a stake or suspended above a raging fire. The purpose was twofold. First, it was a warning to other slaves. They were forced to watch, their eyes wide with fear, as the flames licked at their fellow enslaved person's body. It was a chilling reminder that disobedience or defiance would be met with the same terrifying fate. But it wasn't just other slaves who were made to witness these public burnings. Owners from neighboring plantations and even people from nearby towns would come to watch. They saw it as a form of entertainment, as if the suffering and pain of human beings were some kind of spectacle. The cruelty and horror of
How can the pain and suffering of slavers be some sort of like, I cannot fathom the depth of this wickedness. How can somebody's pain, you taking life, snuffing out life from somebody, be some sort of entertainment? You guys should let me know in the comment section, because I can't. Like, how? Entertainment. Let's say it was some sort of, okay, to send warning to other slavers. Okay. But entertainment? That is sheer wickedness. Like, that is the depth of wickedness. What?
Of public burnings extended beyond the initial moments. Some slaves, overwhelmed by the smoke and heat, would faint or pass out even before the fire consumed their bodies. They were lucky in a way, spared from enduring the worst of the torment, but for many others, there was no escape. They were left to suffer as the flames engulfed them, their cries echoing through the air, until they were silenced forever. It is deeply unsettling to think that even after slavery was abolished, public acts of violence against black individuals persisted. Lynching and hangings continued well into the 20th century, a stark reminder of the enduring legacy of racial injustice. Number 2. Long-term chaining chains were a cruel and painful reality in the history of slavery. They were used to control and imprison enslaved people, causing immense suffering. The use of chains began on slave ships, where Africans were chained together in cramped and suffocating conditions. Runaway slaves often faced long-term chaining as punishment. They were shackled to their workstations or to other enslaved individuals, depriving them of freedom and forcing them into labor. In some instances, lines of slaves were shackled together, forming a sorrowful procession as they carried out menial tasks in unison. This practice, unfortunately, laid the foundation for the infamous chain gangs that would later become synonymous with the oppressive conditions in U.S. prisons. One particularly infamous figure known for her brutal treatment of slaves was Madame Delphine Lalaurie. In the 19th century, investigations were carried out to uncover the truth about how she treated her slaves. However, it was a fire in her home in 1834 that revealed the shocking extent of her cruelty. It is said that during the fire, an elderly female slave who worked as a cook started the blaze, possibly as a desperate act of escape. Heartbreakingly, she was chained to the stove, becoming trapped in the flames that consumed her. As the fire raged, more horrifying discoveries were made in the Lalaurie mansion. In the attic, several enslaved individuals were found in deplorable conditions. They were suspended by their necks, their limbs painfully restrained by chains that stretched and tore their flesh. The attic became a haunting place, filled with the silent suffering of those who were trapped and abused within its walls. The story of Madame Delphine Lalaurie serves as a chilling reminder of the cruelty inflicted during slavery. Number 1. Forced reproduction slaves were often subjected to terrible harassment and assaults, including defilement. Shockingly, there were no laws to protect them from this abuse. When women became pregnant as a result of these terrible acts, they rarely received any medical care or special treatment. In fact, they were often treated even worse by their owners' wives. Men who were enslaved also suffered. They were forced to sleep with different women, as their owners used them for their own purposes. It was a form of exploitation that added to the pain and misery they experienced. In 1808, a law was passed in the United States to stop the importation of slaves. This caused a shortage of slaves in the South. As a result, the demand for black people increased, especially those who could have children. Slaves were bought and sold based on their ability to reproduce. They were forced to have sleep with other slaves to create more children for their owners. Normally, slaves could choose who they wanted to have children with, but there are records that show slaves being matched based on their physical features, as if they were objects to be bred rather than human beings. As we reflect on the unspeakable pain and suffering endured by slaves, one thing becomes clear. These enslaved individuals were among the strongest and most resilient people to have ever lived. Despite facing unimaginable challenges, they found the inner strength to carry on. Let us honor the memory of those who suffered by embracing our shared humanity and working towards a future where no one experiences the darkness that once consumed the lives of the enslaved. As always, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos to let more people know the truth about blacks and to hear their own part of the narratives. Thanks for watching.
Man, this is so horrifying. This is so gruesome. I can't even imagine or fathom this part of history. I know about the slave trading that happened years ago, but I never knew the depth of that slavery. I never knew the depth of the punishment or the pain they had to endure. This is so heartbreaking to watch. I mean, nobody should ever go through such thing. Nobody should ever go through such pain. Nobody should ever go through such wickedness. I mean, I'm thankful for these people that, fought for this, endured this pain. Some of them lived and some of them died. I mean, I hope that their soul is resting. I mean, the ones that died and the ones that survived it probably are not still alive till today because it happened a very long time ago. I mean, this black slavery, this African slavery, I mean, it's so gruesome. Thankful that, these things have passed and we no longer have to experience these things. But I feel like as black people, it's important that we know our history and we know what our forefathers and ancestors went through in the hands of slave traders. I remember there was this debate between Douglas Murray and this immigrant, and then she was trying to remind him of what slave traders happened just, I think, not slave trade, but I forgot it. What's it called now? And then Douglas Murray was saying that how long are we going to be reminded of these things that happened? You cannot expect people to just forget these things and move on. It is hard for you to actually see things like my ancestors actually went through this. My forefathers actually went through this sort of torture in the hands of white slavers or white slave traders. Come on. I mean, you don't beat a child and tell the child how to cry. That is exactly what the immigrant was telling Douglas. Because Douglas was saying that, okay, in Turkey was also, I can't remember the word right now, because, I mean, this is a lot to actually take in. But, I mean, whew. Anyway, let's know your thoughts and comments in this comment section below. Let's try to be respectful in our contributions and additions. Let's make sure that, you know, whatever comments we are adding, you are also being sensitive, because we are all humans at the end of the day. Let's not forget, I mean, yes, I mean, times have passed, things have changed. A lot of these African countries have gained independence. There's nothing like slave trading anymore. But these black people will never forget. It is part of our history. So if you're going to be dropping a comment, let's try to be sensitive and let's try to be respectful in whatever comments we're going to be making. But I'd love you guys to drop your comments and thoughts about these particular shocking things that were normal to slave. I don't know how this kind of thing is normal to slavers. Like, I don't know how this is normal. This is forced reproduction, where you are forced to actually get pregnant in that kind of condition, in that kind of situation. I cannot fathom. Like, I cannot fathom. Anyway, kindly drop your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. I'll be in the comment section replying to your comments. Do well to like, share, subscribe, turn on your post notification bell, and I'll see you in my next episode. Bye bye.